When you're in Power Query, there's two significant tabs in the ribbon. There's the Transform tab and there's the Add Column tab. Now, a lot of the buttons are repeated on both tabs. For example, I'm in the Add Column tab and here's the Format button. But when I go to Transform, I also see the Format button and the Extract and the Parse, and I go to Add Column and there's the Extract and the Parse. So why are a lot of the buttons duplicated on the Add Column and on the Transform tab? The reason is when you select a column, do you want to transform the data that's in that column and change the data, or do you want to add a new column to the table or the query that transforms the data and puts it in a separate column? So let's have a look at the difference and why a lot of these buttons are repeated. Now I'm sitting in the Sales 2019 to 2021 query, and I actually got rid of the steps, replace value 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I'm back in a situation where I have a brand column and I hit the drop down and a lot of the brands are repeated, like Fabricum and Litwear. And the reason they're repeated is because this data came from Excel. And in Excel, in the brand column, some people typed Litwear and some people typed Litwear space. And so when it comes into Power Query, Litwear and Litwear space are two different types of entries. So I really want to get rid of any trailing spaces. And because I want to transform this column, not create a new column, I go to the Transform tab in the ribbon. With this column selected and the Transform tab chosen, I can go to the Format button. And the button I want to use is Trim. Trim will remove any leading or trailing spaces after each entry in that selected column. So I'm going to click the Trim option, and you see that step appear in my steps. And if I hit my drop down now, you'll see that I only have one instance of Litwear and one instance of Fabricum. So it's removed any spaces after any of the entries in this column and any spaces before any of the entries. Really handy thing. Okay, so that's really handy. Now the next thing I want to do is some of these brands have the word limited on the end and some of them don't. I want to get rid of the word limited off some of these entries. So I'm going to transform this column using the Replace Values button. And I want to get rid of space limited. So that's what I want it to find. And I don't want to replace it with anything. So I leave this blank and I go OK. And that replaced space limited and took it away from each of the brands. Now what I want to do is add limited to every brand. So what we can do is transform again what's in this column. Using the Format button, we can add a prefix or a suffix. So if you want to add some standard text before each entry, you'd use a prefix, but in this case, we're going to add a suffix. So I'm going to add the suffix space limited. And when I go OK, it literally adds the suffix space limited at the end of every single brand. So those are a couple of the formatting options which are really handy. Trim any leading or trailing spaces. Clean gets rid of any non-printable characters such as carriage returns and tabs. You can get rid of those and clean those with this option. And adding a prefix or a suffix. Now what if I wanted to change the case of what was in this column? I can change it to lowercase, uppercase, or capitalize each word. So I'm going to go for uppercase. And I've basically formatted every entry in this column to uppercase. So that's using the Format button in a transform context. What else can we do? Let's say we go to orders 1997 to 2000, where we have a column called date. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to extract the year, but I don't want to lose the date column. So I don't want to transform these dates into years. I want to create an additional column. So in this case, I'll go add column. Add column and I'll go to date. And I want a year extracted from the date. not the start of the year, the 1st of the 1st, or the end of the year, the 31st of the 12th. I actually want the actual year. So I click this option here. It throws me to the last 8th column in this table, and the year has been extracted from that particular date. I'm just going to drag it to the left so I can see it alongside of date. So there's the year there. Now let's click back on the date column, and I want to add another column using the date button, and it's the month. I don't want the month as a number, and I don't want to know how many days are in the month, or what is the date of the first of the month or the date of the end of that month. I actually want the name of the month. So I click this option. This time it didn't throw me to the end, so that's not always guaranteed. So I've got to scroll to the end, and here's my column, month name, and I'm just going to drag it and position it to the right of year. And so from that date column, I can see that the month is November, December, January. So I've pulled out the year and I've pulled out the name of the month. But what if I want to pull out the day? I click back on date. I want to add a column. It's a date generated column. I could choose quarter, I could choose week, but I'm going for day. I don't want the number of the day, I want the name of the day. So I choose this option. I'm not always guaranteed to be thrown to the end, but at the end, the last column, the 10th column, I have my name of the day. So I'm just dragging that back and dropping it after month name. There. So what we've done is we've pulled out the year, the month, and the name of the day that belongs to that date. So whether you want to transform the date or whether you want to add a column based on the date, decides whether you go for that tab or that tab. Now let's have a look at what else we can do. So if I go to the employees query, for example, and I have a birth date column in here, there it is there. Now I want to know the age of my employees based on their birth date. I want to add a column, it's a date column, and it's their age. So I choose the option age. I'm thrown to the end of my table to the 19th column. I want to move that to the beginning. So I'm going to go home. I'm going to go to move column, actually transform, move to the beginning. That's a quick way. If you've got a very large query with lots of columns, you could just quickly move it to the beginning and then put it in place sort of thing. So I'm just going to drag it back a little bit. And here it is here. Okay, so there's my age, but it's not showing in years. So now I want to transform, not add, I want to transform this column that I added into years. So I go to transform and I go to duration and I want to see it in total years. I could see it in total days, but I want to see it in total years. And so there I see that this person is 73.49 years old. I want to see that though as a whole number. So I click the data type and I change it to a whole number. And so now I'm seeing their age as total years formatted to a whole number. And I could move it, which I already have. And so those are some of the date buttons that you've got available to you in both the transform and the add column, as well as the duration, which was quite useful.